As I got you, yeah, everything is gonna be alright. I know it will. Be alright. Oh, yeah.
Hey, 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 Longs. What
Yes,
is
yes, sir. We are
what it
live.
do?
We are back once again.
Yes. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Sabbath
Hmm.
morning show. If it's your first time, your second time, but never your last,
That's
we
right.
appreciate you for stopping by, whether you are Greek nor Jew. It don't matter. We
all
all family here.
all viewers matter. All listeners matter.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. So we want to thank you for coming back and kicking it with us. I am, well, that's Chuck. Bam,
That's Zig. Bam. We are two for
bam.
two.
There we go. Just two Christian brothers trying to make sense of it all. And
Sometimes it's tough. Sometimes that's not easy.
sometimes. That's one of my favorite songs, by the way, by Bilal. Sometimes. And I don't know if you know that song. It's probably not Christian appropriate. However, um, it definitely speaks to the realities of relationships sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Um, so this has been ain't nothing really happening this week. So this is low key. This will probably be a low key episode.
Oh yeah.
Uh, ain't nothing really going on.
Just angels from Africa, you know.
There's angels from Africa. We're gonna talk about little angels from Africa. I think people forgot COVID still out there.
Yeah, I must have forgot, man.
COVID, like I'm back like I never left.
Right.
We had some stuff happening with the Supreme Court. Got the
Hmm.
debut of Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
Yep.
Something about them hyphenated names, brother. Something about them hyphenated names.
So yeah, man, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. I know we haven't.
I didn't notice.
Oh yeah, and there's this whole little thing about counting. Have you heard?
Yeah,
I'm not talking
I
about
think it was
Sesame Street.
I thought it was a Sesame Street episode. I saw like one of those cartoon news clips, and it was talking about counting. It was funny. So that's what we got going on, and we want you to join in on the conversation. So thank you for being our co-host.
Yes, sir.
We want to hear from you, but before we begin, we're gonna say a brief word. Kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you from the depths of our heart, Lord, for the ability to do good, and we hope that you impress upon us and those that are listening to do just that. Amen.
Amen. And definitely shout out to you, Leon. Happy Sabbath. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Uh-oh. Did we lose connection with Zig? Looks like we might have. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties may arise. Shout out in the comments. Let me know y'all can still hear us. At least one of us. Make sure my internet isn't the one that shut down. It's too early in the show for this, Zig. I will wait a minute or two. Yep, it looks like I am by myself. All by myself. Thank you for the confirmation. I see you in the comments. Thank you, Leon. Looks like my co-host unfortunately had some technical difficulties. I will get the chance to talk to you fans. How's everybody out there? Uh-oh. We got some angry people. Sorry about the technical difficulties. It's too soon. The show must go on. Indeed, it must go on. I don't know if y'all want to hear me riff for another hour, but I'm sure Pernell will join, man. It's so crazy. This morning, I myself had technical difficulties. My computer restarted exactly at 9:28. And I was like, the show starts at 9:30. How is this happening? It just be like that sometimes. Well, we indeed definitely have a good show. We got all types of craziness that happened this week. I'm glad you're feeling blessed, Leon. I'm definitely feeling blessed despite the current circumstances, despite COVID and all of the challenges that we've been facing here. I'll be happy when this election's over. But the funny part is, everyone's like, oh, we don't have a president yet. It's like, relax, calm down. We have a president. We just don't have a president yet for next year, which is okay. We will, we got like what, 2 months, 3 months before the new president's supposed to start. So there's no rush. It looks like Zig is starting to join back in. I'll give him a minute or two to get his internet bills paid for. That's why we need listeners like you guys to support us so that technical difficulties like this don't continue to happen. It's it's an important part of our monetization. Now, actually, fun fact, we don't monetize any of this. This is all free. We just enjoy having the conversations with you guys. We enjoy having being able to share the news from kind of our point of view and kind of the Christian perspective, and give y'all some laughter, some joy, even though a lot of bad news is happening in our world. That's not the end. It's just a sad portion that we all have to go through and experience, right? Because we all have bad news. All right. How was the Sabbath show created? That is a good question. Hey, God, I may have to come back to that. Let's see. It looks like we got him back.
We got a backup. The backup to the backup.
All right. You got some echo, though.
Yeah, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Let me see if this will work.
But while he's getting his technical difficulties in order, I'll answer your question. The Sabbath show was created actually out of fun, out of being spontaneous. We were testing out the StreamYard software for our church, and we just logged in and went live from our accounts, and people started watching.
There we go.
Yep.
We good?
All right. We good.
There we go.
People started watching, were interested in what we were saying, and we were just having fun with it, and we kept doing it. And surprisingly, people kept coming back. So
right.
Here we are.
That was an unforeseen consequence.
13.
Unforeseen consequence. We was like, wait, y'all actually watching this?
Right. And Pernell and Zig and I are good friends, and we're always talking about stuff that's happening in our world just throughout the week. And we were like, you know what? We can do that with everybody. We can have a conversation with other people online. And there really wasn't someone filling this void of bringing kind of a Sabbath morning show vibe to within the Adventist church. So we have decided to fill that void for the time being and share the news and highlights and new music, interesting interviews, all of the above. Without further ado, this is now episode 13. This is finally started a Christian State of Mind for November 7th. So where do we begin, Zig? Where do we begin?
Oh man, I think we got our first. Do we got the clip? Tell me we got the clip.
We got the clip. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
I think we have our first ever reaction video. Is that what we're gonna call it?
That's what we're gonna call it, man. It's pretty crazy. I wasn't ready. I don't know if you were.
Oh no.
We're just gonna play a clip of it. Some of y'all know where this is going.
against the election, against America, against that who you have declared to be in the White House. We break it up in the name of Jesus. We lose confusion into every demonic confederacy directed right now at this election, directed specifically at the 6 states. We come against people that are working at high levels right now with demonic confederacies and secrecies and demonic plans and networks. We break it up and we command that it be exposed right now in the name of Jesus. Strike and strike. The angels have even been dispatched from Africa right now. Africa right now. Africa right now. From Africa right now. They're coming here. They're coming here in the name of Jesus. From South America. They're coming here. They're coming here.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. And that's not even the full clip.
No, it goes. She go way deeper than that.
Yeah, man. So who is she, first of all?
So Paula White is an evangelical pastor who is actually on the president's. She's part of the president's administration. So she's a spiritual advisor. I actually think she has a taxpayer-funded position. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, she is. She's a pastor.
She is a pastor. She is the spiritual advisor to Donald Trump, and that clip, which was condensed just for time, she went in and did this prayer of victory for Donald Trump and prayed for angels to come all the way from Africa, because the angels in the U.S. didn't have time for that.
They wasn't good enough.
Nope.
And she also called from angels from
South America,
which was, that was interesting.
It was an international, request.
And she was like, "Hey, we need angels from," and then now listen, I done been to my share of prophetic churches.
Mm-hmm.
I done been to my share. I done been to my fair of these Kojic brothers and sisters, and the last time I was at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church Evangelical House of God,
Apostolic Ministries.
Right. Last time I was there, I don't remember tongues being said. So I don't know if she was speaking in another language.
She was supposed to be speaking in tongues. I didn't play that part of the clip because it sounded but yes.
I was like,
she was supposed to be speaking in tongues, and she was supposed to be praying against the demonic warfare that was happening in our election. And man, it's crazy, because you know what, it's funny to look at, but actually this is a catalyst for almost every topic, I think, on today's show, because this is a very small microscope look into religious liberty. It's a look into the evangelical Christians and voting. I think this is the perfect way to start the show, because somehow, and that's what's crazy, somehow this describes everything that's happening right now.
It does.
SARS,
absolutely.
COVID, everything.
100%.
It's tied into this viewpoint.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, where was this energy when Obama was president, right? Because there's this, they reference a lot of times you'll hear people reference the scripture where it talks about we need to pray for our leaders, and I don't remember that fervent of a prayer when Obama was in office.
Well, Obama didn't have Paula White, you know what I'm saying? He didn't have that same height. I think he had Rick Warren was one of his spiritual advisors.
Right.
Trying to give him a purpose-driven presidency.
And I said, "Wow, this is something new."
Yeah, man. And what's interesting too is that the evangelical Christians, man, they were definitely in full effect for the voting. They, I think there was only a 5% drop. I think in the previous election, 2016, 80% or 81% voted for Trump, and I think this year was more like 76% of evangelical Christians supported Trump in this election. So that that mindset, the people who were there, because she wasn't just praying to, God in her closet. She was at a function, right? There was a bunch of people there listening, watching, and there's a lot of people out there who were definitely voted for Trump. Although maybe their numbers haven't been counted, man. What's been going on with that?
Yeah, I don't even think we even there yet, man. I was trying my best to say, like, is it possible for us to not talk about that this week? No, let's save that, right? Because it's all just too funny, man. But hey, how about COVID? Huh? How about that?
You can't skip over the votes, man. You can't skip over the votes. Everybody's waiting every morning. Listen, don't you know? Every morning I wake up and after I read the scripture, sometimes even before that, I'm looking to see, do we have a president, man?
Are you serious?
Yeah. I mean, I can't help it. The first night I was cool. The first night when I went to bed and they had just started, doing the tallies, it was like 11 o'clock, no announcement, of course. And I was like, cool. I went to sleep. And in the morning, I was expecting to hear somebody was president. That didn't happen. No,
I knew better. So Monday night at about 10 o'clock, I set my phone to do not disturb. And I went to sleep. And I slept good. And I said it for 2 days.
Oh, man.
So I didn't get no news Tuesday, no news Wednesday, and then Thursday. So Thursday, when I woke up, I was like, all right, this should be cool. Because Wednesday night, my wife had asked me, are you still on a blackout? And I was like, and so in my mind, I was like, oh, it must be over. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll just wait till tomorrow. And so I woke up Thursday and they still counting. And I was like, oh man.
Counting.
So then I started looking through the stuff, and then I noticed, I sent my friend a text because I was looking at Georgia, like, what is happening? It's like my home state failed me. And then
Stacey Abrams said no.
Yeah, and I was like, what is happening over here? Then I looked, and Kanye picking up votes from Idaho,
Tennessee.
I'm like, what is happening? And I just knew, I was like, you know what? I almost turned my phone back off again. But then Georgia came back. I was like, what?
Yes, they did.
It was like a fourth quarter.
It was like a Falcons game, man. You thinking that they're gonna win, and then there's a comeback, man. And it's been crazy, just how everything has been going, and on what everyone's reaction has been. And we definitely want to hear from you guys. What's your reaction to the current situation with the voting? But I know every time I look at the news I've been looking at both the right and the left media. The right's like, oh man, there's definitely widespread cheating going on. And the left is like, nah, nobody's cheating. We just trying to make every vote count. All votes matter.
Yo, so check this. I saw this thing that said, let me put it in terms that the evangelical brothers and sisters can understand. The life of a vote happens once it's put into the ballot. And God would not want us to kill that life before
it's been
before it has reached full term, which means it has to be counted.
That's true. That's true.
And so, yeah, out here in Detroit, we got they got protests out there at the Kobo, which is, it used to be called Kobo. Now it's called TFC or TCF. I don't know. I'm gonna call it Kobo. I feel like Mama named him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay.
That's right.
So down there at Kobo, that's where they was doing the counting. And I don't know if you saw that, but they had people show up because the president had declared victory.
Yeah, I mean, there's been people showing up. I mean, the state was sued too. I will say though that as Frank mentioned, the best part has just been the election memes. Like that's the only thing keeping me sane right now. Is seeing all of the memes with we got Count Dracula in the voting booth. He's the one counting the ballots.
Right. It's just been a roller coaster, bro. And it's just like, how did we get here?
Right. And
nobody is supposed to be here.
And I'm curious to see what's the final vote. Like, how many people actually voted this year in the 2020 election? Because I think in the last election it was about 60% of the eligible population.
Yeah, the number definitely turnout was higher. I think they said the turnout was definitely higher. Mm-hmm. Definitely the people the mail-in, absentee, provisional ballots, those were all higher as well. There were more mail-in ballots than there were people who voted in person.
Yeah. And I think the estimates right now about 160 million voters cast a ballot this year.
Yep.
So it's definitely up from previous years where it's been more like 100 million people voted.
So it's definitely an interesting paradigm that we have going on here.
Yep, and indeed, definitely record turnouts on both sides.
on both sides.
On both sides, there's good voters on both sides,
Right.
And you gotta laugh at it. I mean, look, like your picture says, this is what we've all been through. This is what this election cycle has done to all of us. We're looking like Jamie Foxx and Spider-Man right now. That's what we're looking like, and it's been a definitely a roller coaster ride, and it's a. I'll say, and I see your comment. I'll say that it's sad and interesting to see the commentary on or to have this commentary on America, because it's interesting to see that how close everything is. Like,
yeah, because it's split. Saying. Yeah, everything seems to be split down the middle. So, oh wait, bam! There you go.
Yeah, it's definitely down the middle. If you look at the votes,
I'm having trouble connecting to the network. Please try again a bit later.
Got a man listening over there. Now it's definitely been interesting to see the split between people voting. You have people that you have counts that have been 48, 49%, in several states.
Some of them was 49.5 and 49.9.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Even for the Senate race, right? Gary Peters and your boy John James. He
ain't no friend of mine, bro. They
were close. It was a close race. So I mean, I think this has just shown, and I heard some commentary where said that basically the blue states got bluer and a lot of the red states got redder. And it just shows
except for Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some exceptions like Michigan, Arizona, Nevada. There's been some definite exceptions where they've flipped.
But not by, and I think that was the thing. So people were expecting to see the country essentially come together. And they thought that the majority of the people would come together and affirm one thing over another, right? But we already know that that's not true. And I can appreciate what Biden said when he said, it's important to understand that when you're president of everybody, whether they voted for you or not. And I think that sentiment is completely lost. I know I watched another news clip yesterday when, the BBC reporter was interviewing a Trump, someone from the administration, and she was like, help me understand, like, how does this work? Right. Cause she's like, I'm from another country. Like,
right.
Like everything that is or should be doesn't seem like it is doing that. And so she was like, help me understand. And, the lady started explaining, like, we need to make sure that we're only counting the legal votes. We don't want illegal votes. So she's like, what is illegal? Like, what is an illegal vote? Like, what are you talking about? And so then she said, she was like, you know, in Michigan, they stopped counting. That's not fair. And so she was like, wait, what do you mean they stopped talking? They stopped,
Stop counting.
she's like, what do you mean they stopped counting? And so she was like, yeah, they stopped counting. She was like, the count is still going on. What are you talking about?
Right.
And so, you know, what we look like to other countries. The New Yorker ran a, I don't know if I said this before, but the New Yorker ran a special where they interviewed foreign journalists
Mm-hmm.
from all these other countries, and they were basically saying like, you know, what are your thoughts on America, and what is it? And they were like, this is like a TV show.
It is. It's gonna have an epic ending. And
yeah.
I know everybody's excited to see it, but one of the things, and Frank just posted this, about every 1 in 2 voters support MAGA. And I want to kind of stop and pause on that, because Lovely and I were talking earlier this week. I met with one of my coworkers from my last job, and we had lunch, and he's a Trump supporter. But what was interesting was his mindset, and he's not a racist guy. He's not, you know, one of these guys that are like a gun-toting Republicans. That's not his feel. But his viewpoint on how things are, he's like, don't you think things are better now anyway, right? He was like, overall, right? Overall, things are better. He's like, I know it's better. Not great. Better, he was saying better for everyone. And what was interesting was that we talked about everything, right? So we talked about the economy, we talked about civil rights, and even from his perspective, like he was like, oh, you know, I don't think cops are necessarily racist. I think cops are just poorly trained and, you know, basically jerks in general. Because we were talking about the Wallace case, we talked about the Breonna Taylor case, and he agrees with those. He was like, yeah, the cops were wrong in all those situations. But his point was that it's not necessarily racist, it's just poor training. And so I bring up this just to say that, what are your conversations like with other people who don't have the same viewpoint as you? I think part of the issue that divides the country is that people aren't willing to listen and understand people's perspectives and work together for a common goal. Even though you have different methods and even different views on certain things, there has to be some common ground, especially as Christians.
And that's, I think, where it really kicks in. I know I had a couple conversations this week that were basically the same thing, where people were, one conversation went way further than what I thought it was going to go. Where, you know, you start talking to somebody like, hey, how was your day? Like, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. I haven't seen a lot of people. And, you know, my confession time, brother. I actually, like, I had to hug this lady because she was talking. And again, she started out, I think, as a Trump supporter, but now, you know, she was talking about her kids. And then she talked about not being able to spend time with her friends anymore because she doesn't want to get her mother and father sick, who are keeping her kids, and her friends don't understand. And so she was like, that's when it clicked for her, because she didn't want to get her family sick. And she was like, people just aren't taking it serious, and they don't care about other people. And she was like, that's where it's really starting to hurt. And she started crying. And she was like, there's just so much hate out there. And when she was talking about hate, she was talking about from the perspective of the people that she calls family and friends are no longer the people she thought that they were. You know, and I think that's powerful, man. And to, you know, and so she, even as I reflect on it now, she was mourning the loss of one of her closest friends.
Wow.
And it was kind of like, she was like, you know, she's not who, you know, I thought she was, right? It was cool when we was just playing with our kids and getting together and having picnics. But now that we actually have to think about other people, and she's seeing that her friend just can't do that, right? They see the idea of thinking about other people as infringing on their rights.
Right.
And it's like, how do we get here, right? How do we get to this place where if you vote for Trump, you're a racist, and if you vote for Biden, you're a communist? socialist, right? And it's kind of like neither
those
one
are
of
the
those,
two.
like neither one of those two things are true for
Right.
everybody, right?
Right.
I think it's a minority of people that fit that description, but it's not the majority. And I think it's unfortunate, you know.
Yeah, that's a good comment. That's the power when politics impacts you personally, and that's definitely true.
Which kind of goes back to the Paula White thing too, and which has a lot to do with this idea of when you're a Christian, like how do you, you know, it's our behavior, right? It's how we act, it's how we present ourselves to other people. I talked with a pastor. I told you about that. I talked to a pastor about 2 weeks ago, and he said, you know, character is the number one thing. And then it sounded like they don't apply those same characteristics to the leaders that they support.
Well, I think they apply them just differently. Like when you talk to some of them, the way that they're applying is that their character voting is coming off of, do they support, you know, homosexuality? Do they support abortion? They're more specific to certain things that are important to them, but not necessarily maybe the whole character of the person themselves. And I think it's can be unfortunate sometimes because they become one issue voters and not necessarily voters of everything. But again, that's, you know, that's their right to vote that way. The important thing is to, like you said, have these conversations and
Yep. And that's the other thing. And that's the other thing too. I had this conversation yesterday with somebody else, is that I think we have got to this place because people don't talk to each other anymore. And if we do talk, we don't listen.
Yeah, it's like YouTube comments. Not these YouTube comments, not these Facebook comments. But it's like YouTube comments. Like, I don't know if you've like purposely gone and like watched the video from an opposing view. Yeah, but that's something I recommend to everyone, just to see this social experiment. When you go watch like Candace Owens or Thomas Sowell, when you look in the comments, you'll see everybody agrees with it. Everybody, you'll be like, there's no dissenters.
And then the one person that disagrees is like they swarm.
Yes, exactly. And everybody wants to hear this echo effect. And I think part of this is the social media effect, where everybody you're friends with has the same views. And then even especially, I've seen it a lot, even on the liberal side. It's like, oh, you don't agree with me? Blocked. Oh,
right. Or you're a hater, or you this, or you that, or you know, or like we talked about this before, how that what was it? I think it was the lady from Star Wars, how she got shamed because she didn't support. It's not that she actually did support. Like there was a transgender issue going on, and she was like, "Good for you." And somebody sent her a message to say like, "Hey, put your pronouns in your
bio."
Your bio. And she was like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
And so then they were like, so then she kept getting the messages like, put your pronouns in. If you really support us, you'll put your pronouns in. And so she's like, but I just said I supported you. And then all of a sudden, people was like, cancel her. She hates transgender.
Yeah, man. The cancel culture is quick because we're the judge and jury.
And so my last commentary on this is from the conversation I had yesterday. What I ascertained is, and I think Pastor Chaplain Pileggi had said it too. It was that we have this tool called social media, which was engineered initially to bring people together, but it's only really created silos, and it's not really social media. It's really just media. And people flock to the media source that most aligns with what they think or believe.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And that's crazy. But we gotta move on. And actually, there was a comment that asked about Supreme Justice ruling. Supreme Justice Barrett will make the sixth Catholic on the bench. If Jordan becomes president, he's also Catholic. Do you see a Sunday law as a greater possibility? And that's a possibility. I mean, the I think so, because actually, and this ties into our topic about this Supreme Court ruling. And to answer your question, we're going along about way, Leon. So at first, at first, and there's a reason I want to frame it this way. At first, right now, right, there is a case that's gone to the Supreme Court, Fulton versus the city of Philadelphia.
Is this the one about the one we're talking about?
Yeah. That's the official name. Is for those who don't know, that is the Catholic Social Service Center in Philadelphia that did not allow people who were, depends on how you frame it, but the basics is that what they're being accused of is discrimination against same-sex couples from adopting children. And basically they are a foster care service that has a contract with the city of Philadelphia. And the issue is that because they were not allowing same-sex couples to adopt kids, the city basically took away their contract and wouldn't allow them to continue in that role.
Which is so interesting. Right. And so, so what we're saying is they didn't allow them to continue their contract. And then the Catholic Social Services sued because they want to apply the religious liberty standard to the situation and continue to get taxpayer funded referrals for the adoptions that they promote. That's right. So that's where we at, right?
Well, yeah, but they're actually saying that they're not necessarily, that part of it is the religious argument of the First Amendment, but the other part is whether they're, because of how they view it, they're saying that it's not so much that they're discriminating against same-sex couples. They don't see them as married. So their general rule is that anyone who's not married can't adopt. So if you are cohabitating and you're a male and a woman, they still won't let you adopt. So from there, they're saying that we're not being discriminatory against same-sex. We don't. Anyone who's not married can adopt. And from our viewpoint, same-sex couples are not married.
Which is so interesting, because it's that now creates an issue of, like, the state has acknowledged it, right? And so just because it becomes a true legal matter, right? Just because you think that you should be able to drive 70 miles an hour, the posted speed limit is 50. Right. And so I personally think that these people aren't married, but the state, right? The state has put it to say that they are. So just because you think that way. So that's the way I looked at it. You know, and so I also thought about and I think part of the thing too is that we need to explain to people, and I really think people don't understand what freedom of religion and what religious liberty really means. And I think the summary of it is just that the government won't get involved in your religion, period. That's why we don't have an established religion as a country, even though there's a lot of religious sprinklings in there. Same thing like the Pledge of Allegiance. You know, it says one nation under God, but people don't always know that was added in. It wasn't there, and people sued because of the First Amendment. You're not supposed to mix. And they had a very religious, at the time, there was a very religious leaning court that ruled on it, and it was upheld, and it just stood.
Well, the other part of the First Amendment, though, so there's kind of two main clauses, right? Establishment, the government shouldn't establish a religion or promote one religion over another. But there's also the other clause where it can't restrict an individual's religious practices. And it guarantees the freedom of expression, right, of that religion. And so in this case, there's, just to bring in our listeners too, so they're discriminating against single people. Yes. I don't think they're necessarily discriminating. I think it's more of, do they think that they're able to
so they would take care of right.
Yeah, take care
of. They would tag them as
child.
Not qualified.
Right.
Right. And so,
but what I was gonna say was that with with this clause being under study, it brings into question what does it really mean? Because, for example, the state wouldn't step into a religious organization and say you have to have female pastors, right, because that's discriminatory against females, right? So they wouldn't do that. So where is the line between
but see,
what
I
I'm doing as a religious organization? Because from this business's point of view, they're saying we are operating under our normal religious observations,
and that's where I think where it goes left, right? And you said it. This business, they're running a business. So I think if they weren't,
churches are a nonprofit.
No. But listen, what I was trying to say is, if they weren't collecting the money from the state to do it, and they just did it on their own, I feel like, hey, they was free to do it the way that they wanted to, right? They could run it as a nonprofit, but what the state is saying is, we're gonna cancel your contract. You're not gonna get paid. We're not going to pay you to do it because as a state, here are our guidelines and you want to be exempted.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
They're fighting because this is also hinging on the premise of a previous case in the early 90s where basically it permits law that affects religion as long as they are neutral and generally applied. And so that's one of the things that they're appealing to, is that interpretation of whether a government can dictate how a religious organization is operating is under question. Because on the flip side too, right? A case, what was it? Maybe earlier this year was actually denied to review by the Supreme Court, where there was actually an Adventist guy in Seattle, I believe, or Washington State at least, where he was fired for not working on the Sabbath at Walgreens.
I remember that. I do remember that. I don't remember the specifics, but I do.
He wouldn't work on the Sabbath, and basically the state courts and appeals courts basically said that that it was okay for them to do it because it would have made their job have to go through undue circumstances to basically cover a shift, and basically the Title VII clause that it was being applied to for employment and labor laws was not applied in this way because the Walgreens would have to go through all these hoops to basically accommodate them. And so, but from the plaintiff's point of view was that his religious liberty was not being, supported and followed. So I think this is definitely an interesting case. And I have a feeling though that they might rule in favor of the Catholic Church adoption agency because of the way that it's
the makeup of the court.
The makeup of the court, right? With Barrett being on it, it's a very conservative court. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ruled it.
So I one of my favorite pastimes, I guess you could say, is like listening to some of the Supreme Court stuff. Last year was really, really interesting. It had a lot to do about race and double jeopardy. And then so to see this roll out, one of the questions from the court was, how is this different than saying that your religion doesn't believe in permitting adoptions to interracial couples? Because there are some churches that promote this idea that interracial couples goes against their religion. And so the response from because the Department of Justice, and this is what's also interesting, right? We have this separation of church and state that is supposed to exist according to the First Amendment. However, the Department of Justice has signed on behalf of the Catholic Social Services Agency. And so that's also interesting, right? And so it's one thing if the church had brought this suit, but the Department of Justice is working with them to support this initiative.
Well, because I think the other part of the story was that they referred the same-sex couple to another adoption agency and basically said, oh, if you want to adopt, here's a list of other places that will allow you to adopt. We're just not going to do it.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like whites only. You got to go around back.
Maybe it depends on your interpretation, because on the flip side, should the government step in and make religious affiliated hospitals perform abortions? I think that would also not go over well for religiously backed hospitals.
But if it's a service that, and I work at a hospital, and so we have these situations where people will come to our hospital and demand something. We want this, and we'll laugh to each other because it's kind of like, we don't offer that. I know you think we should, but we don't offer that here. So if you want this, then, and I think that's how if your hospital doesn't, we can't enforce you to do something that you don't already do. So as a religious hospital, I would assume that they don't perform them, and they don't. And so if that's not on the menu, you can't go to Burger King and be like, let me get a Big Mac, and then get mad that they ain't got Big Macs. What do you mean you ain't got Big Macs? I'm going to sue.
Right.
And so, but in this case, you offer adoptions, and you've been collecting money from the state to do it. And the state has a contract that I'm pretty sure that you signed that said you will not discriminate based on race, gender, sex.
Right. But I think it's because, and I think this is a good comment, is because there's so much ambiguity between church and state that some situations are clear and others are not. Because just in the same token, the same breath, the city of Philadelphia also knew that they've been doing this for years. It wasn't until probably this couple or somebody complained on behalf of the couple and said, hey, this is going on, then they changed it. I
agree. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you're right. I think that the state picks and chooses when they want to apply the standard, and then I think as a result, people actually do suffer, right? And I think that's where it comes down to it, because especially when we talk about like adoptions, I know me personally, I don't know about anybody else in the comments, I've worked with kids who needed to be adopted, and to know like there's a deficit, right? We have more kids that need to be adopted than there are families willing to take them. And so, and I know we'll talk about this in terms of like the sermon, but I don't know. I just see like the good in all of this being missed.
Right. And I think we touched on that before, is that a lot of times as Christians and even Christian-based organizations, we get caught up a lot of times in, separating ourselves from certain things like, homosexuality in this case. And we understand that that's a biblically based principle, but when you're dealing with people who aren't familiar, it becomes this gray area. And I think because they don't provide like a full solution where maybe perhaps there's more of a holistic solution, that they're saying, okay, look, we're able to house this many people, and they have this, strong initiative to, make sure kids are adopted. I mean, that's been the biggest, I think, problem with a lot of people and how they feel about evangelicals and abortion, is that there's all this big push to no abortion, but then there's not the same push to make sure that, kids don't go hungry, that kids are provided for, and that, their whole lives are taken care of, and not just
absolutely
the beginning of it.
It's like the same concept of when people chant all lives matter, right? So it's kind of like, if you really believe that, you would act in accordance. But since you don't, here's this reminder. And I agree with what Frank said in the comments. I know that's my position, right? Once you take state money, you can't insert and kind of pick and choose the a la carte menu. You can do it on your own as a nonprofit, which they do. There are a lot of agencies that do it that way, so that they can maintain their doctrine. And so, but once you say, well, we need to diversify our funds, well, there's contractual obligations that come with it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily diversifying your funds. I think it's more about being able to reach more kids by having the contract, with the city, and being able to operate and do more. And the question definitely is, how do we respond as Christians? What is our take? And I think the take on it is that we have to remember that yes, we live in this world, and yes, we're Christians, and we have to remember, what is our balance? What do we do on a daily basis to still live for Jesus, but still also respect other people's right to not be religious? I think all of us work with coworkers who are, don't necessarily believe the same we do, who are even atheists, and we can't necessarily try to back them for our beliefs, be like, you know what, I don't want to eat lunch with you because you don't believe the same way with me. Like,
right.
that's not how you witness. And I think we have to keep that in mind on a personal level of what we do.
And I think that's a good segue to as good a segue as we ever gonna get. And to shout out to Pastor Ron Sidney.
Yes, sir.
Pastor TP, who is preaching a sermon series, the 7 churches. You can catch that on YouTube every Sabbath, or at least every Sabbath. He's on church number 5, so we got 2 more Sabbath. 2 more Sabbath.
It's church number 6. We're on part 6 today, so I'm sorry today.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So you got this Sabbath, the next Sabbath, but you can catch it on YouTube to catch up. Last week's sermon was about the church of Thyatira, right? So this is from Revelation chapter 1 through 4, right?
No,
right?
I thought it was further out. No.
I don't know. I thought it was.
Why'd you bring it up? No.
Okay. Anyway, the 7 churches in Revelation. And so he talked about the church of Thyatira. I did actually watch the sermon though, so I might get that part. So he talked about how the church was full of love and service, which is a good thing. But then they started to adopt doctrine that was not based in love. Yeah. And I think that's where, I think going back to the religious liberty stuff, right? So people are so ingrained on enforcing their beliefs, and in some cases enforcing their beliefs on others, that the what is it? The pastor said, unloving doctrine and loving compromise is hated by God. And I thought that was powerful, because back to kind of what we do as a Christians, how do we respond? The answer should always be in love. However, as a church, as a body, whether you're Baptist, Sabbath keeping, whatever, we have a lot of doctrine that we adopt that's not rooted in love.
Yeah, I think maybe to phrase it differently, I think we have a lot of doctrine that we don't follow maybe necessarily in love, and that we don't practice necessarily in love. I think, even for example, something, as near and dear to us as Adventists as a Sabbath, we don't, there's a danger where it becomes a burden, right? I mean, just like in Jesus' times where it was like, oh man, you can't, you can only walk so far, you can only travel so far, on the Sabbath. And I think the principle of it, right, is we want to spend time with God and our families and have this, kind of heaven on earth experience with God once a week, and celebrate and keep it holy. But I think what ends up happening is, like, even with the phrase happy Sabbath, right? You hear people say it, happy Sabbath. There's no smile. They're just like, happy Sabbath. This is Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that the way that we practice our doctrine is the issue. And I think from the sermon series, that's what the pastor's been walking us through, is how, the different phases of the church, these were different churches during that time, but each of those churches are still represented in today's church, not just within Adventism, but within, all of Christianity. We see, Ephesus and Smyrna, all those different churches represented in a lot of different ways. And it's important, I think, for us to study and understand the churches in Revelation, to understand not just where we are as a church, but where we are as in our own spiritual walk with Christ.
And I thought one of the other points that was really interesting was that he was saying how whatever you whatever thing we put before God is the thing that we need to get rid of. And I thought it was interesting how he went into it, because a lot of times as a church we put doctrine before God. And so it's kind of like this idea that we're doing these things and I mean it's very pharisaical, right? It's kind of like and I think it shows, and I think the same thing happened like with the Paula White. So it's like for me, all of this stuff tied in because like the Paula White or how people vote and how people almost in a sense worship like the politics, which is interesting, and they completely lose all sight of their Christianity for the sake of being right, or having this ardent belief that this person is the person that God wants, when it I don't know, it's crazy. But it ultimately becomes it appears like they put this thing before God.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think we had mentioned the video from Mark Finley, and that was one of the things he talked about. Was he was like basically he was like, I guarantee that most of you have talked to other people about voting and have not talked to other people about God. Like,
yep.
I think that's 100. Like, I think all of us have been guilty of that. We've definitely talked to more people about voting and our politics. But we won't be like, hey, man, why don't you come to church? Why don't you check out Pastor Sydney's sermon on Revelation,
right?
Church in Revelation. And it's like what you're saying, we're putting all these other things before God. And that's not what's important in the end.
Yep. And so it's kind of like and I guess that's a question to the audience too, is, how do you find yourself talking about politics more than spirituality? And I think if you, I mean, a good way to do it is to blend the two of them. I will try to blend the two of them and talk about my own Christian beliefs or Christian character when I talk to people. So it's not just because it's so polarizing. And so it's kind of like, well, I just be like, well, as a Christian, this is what I think. And this is what I believe. And, I think that we should be doing the most good for people and not be so, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says we need to worry about the economy. Like, I don't see where the Bible says the economy is the number one issue we should be focused on. I said, no, the Bible says people. And that's how I look at politicians.
Right. And this is always one of my favorite quotes is preach the gospel at all times when necessary, use words. And I think that's 100% true. That is our calling. That is what we're supposed to do. God is definitely in control. And I think, of course we can still vote. I don't think the Bible's calling us not to vote, but the Bible does remind us that, God sets up kings and takes them down, or in this case, presidents or dictators or prime ministers, whatever, or monarchies, whatever the government you find yourself in. But God is the main one in control. That verse, I was looking at it today. That verse is actually during a prayer that Daniel was giving in praise to God for revealing the secrets of the Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Wait. So you mean that prayer didn't include calling on angels from Africa and South America?
No, he did not ask for angels from South America to help interpret the dream. He asked for interpretation and said, thank you, God. And thank you for the one being in control and for setting up kings and kingdoms. And even in Daniel's life, like our lives, he went through a bunch of different kings, a bunch of different rulers, and still remained faithful to God. And that is our duty.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. So I just encourage Paula White to keep that same energy. So when Biden if he gets elected, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think they should be done counting.
Hopefully.
So in about 2 to 3 weeks, I want to see that same fervent prayer for your elected leader.
That's it.
That's it. Apply the standard equally, because you know what? Unfortunately, man, whether it be, and I think the pastor talked about this a little bit too, or at least alluded to it. whether it be homosexuality, whether it be the issue of abortion, whether it be politics and elections. People, unfortunately, I feel like people are going to lose their soul over these issues.
Don't let that be you. Don't let that happen to you, folks.
Dude, don't do that.
No,
don't do it. Don't do it. You better seek ye the kingdom of heaven.
So, yeah, man, it's definitely been crazy. I think for our last topic in this week in review is INSARS. It's something that we haven't had a chance to talk about, and I almost was going to skip it today again because of time, because we're already at the 1 hour mark.
It is important though.
It's definitely important. Go ahead and know what is SARS, maybe for those.
So SARS, for people who don't know, stands for the Special Anti-Robbery Squad.
That sounds like a good thing. I don't want to be robbed.
Absolutely. Like who wants to be robbed? Do you want to be robbed?
I sure don't.
Listen, as a person who grew up in the hood and has been robbed before at gunpoint, it's not fun.
No, never.
It's not fun. You don't want that to happen in your life. And so the hashtag INSARS is the SARS, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, was established in Nigeria and essentially has been doing a number of they almost call them a terrorist group. So they've done a number of anti-humanitarian issues.
I mean, they've been torturing people. There's been the one thing that I think really set it off, at least recently, right? Because this has been going on for years. The thing that caught everyone's attention and went viral was they dragged this guy out. These special police dragged him out and shot him
in daylight.
Right? He was inside
in front of a crowd,
and that's what put the light bulb on. I think most of social media and everyone else is like, "What is going on?"
So there have been protests. So it happened, unfortunately, I want to say around the same time around George Floyd. So the world responded when we had our George Floyd incident. And so there were already protests about ending racism and ending police brutality. And then this happened in Nigeria. And they said that this group has been one of the most corrupt entities in that country. And they specifically target young people. And so there was a testimony at a court hearing where a young man testified that one of the officers, because these are police officers, took a exhaust pipe from a car, hit him in the face with it, and knocked out his teeth. And so it's kind of like there's all these visceral things happening. People are protesting to say INSARS. So the government, under pressure, and disbanded the group.
Right.
Now that's important. They disbanded the group, but they didn't fire anybody. So those people were still police officers.
Right. They're just not in that special task force.
Yep.
But and they still work for the police.
Right. So they only fired one guy. And then I think this was about 2-3 weeks ago, I think. During one of the protests, and this is also unfortunate and sad, live on television, in some cases, live on social media, there was a protest, and the government at like 2 PM issued a curfew. But they issued the curfew for 4 PM. So you already had these people out protesting, they're on these bridges. And so at 4 PM, the police moved in. And they opened fire on a number of people on that bridge, and a lot of people lost their lives,
or were injured,
or injured, and they just, no one had enough time to respond to the lockdown, and it was just horrible. And so now you have this ongoing protest where they're saying, when they say INSARS now, it's not enough that you disbanded the group, but the practices of that group. And so we just want people to know and be aware, pray for our brothers and sisters across the pond, as they like to call it.
Definitely. It's been, and it's difficult. I know for other stuff that's been happening in the States, it's a lot easier to become active and involved. It can be a little bit more challenging to be as active in something happening, across the pond, in Africa. But I think at first, definitely awareness is the first step, and of course prayer. But there's other ways you can support, and you can look up a lot of that information online. We'll have that in the show notes as well.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, one of the places that's been bringing a lot of attention to this is Amnesty International.
Mm-hmm.
They are a nonprofit worthy of donations. So I would definitely, and they do a lot of educational material too, so that people are aware of what's happening in these around the world in a lot of these places. Interestingly enough, they also have been doing investigations here in America about voter suppression, about police brutality as well. So I think it's interesting. One of my favorite cadences from the military is "Freedom ain't free."
It's true, and I think as Christians, the Bible has a lot to say about justice and how we should love justice and fight for justice. And this is yet another case. I think this year has been a year of several examples where there have been injustices on kind of every level, from local to state to government and global, especially in this particular case with the SARS issues out in Nigeria. And I think it's our calling, our duty, our responsibility to, take these things seriously and find out how we can help and support. And at the very least, pray for, safety for those who are over there. Because, especially as a Christian, there's Christians there. We should definitely, but even for those who, may believe differently, we're called to pray for them as well. So yeah,
that's definitely been my scripture of the year. Isaiah 117.
Yeah.
Do good, seek justice.
That's right.
Defend the oppressed, the fatherless, and the widow. Paraphrasing, but essentially, yeah. And I've been telling it to my kids every chance I get, because they need to know, like, we have to do right. We have to stick up for those who can't stick up for themselves. And it's a message of love, right? By your love, they will know that you are my disciples. And when I see stuff happening, whether it's in politics or around the world or in the community, where there's no response of love, and yet that person is claiming their Christian values, nah, we ain't doing that.
No.
Not today, Satan.
Not today. And on that note, I do want to move to our last segment of the show, Sabbath Mentions. It's my favorite part of the show, where we shout out one of our favorite things on social media, and especially given all the heavy topics we talked about on today's show, we want to leave y'all on a happy note, something to make you smile, something to make you laugh.
Do we get some more chai tea?
No more chai tea. It's not chai tea. It's chai. Don't you forget it. No, the thing I want to share is, I don't know if you guys are aware of this group. It's on Instagram. It's called SDA Memes. I find their memes to be very hilarious and very specific to the Adventist faith. And this is one of the examples. They have a bunch where this one's talking about the Pathfinder uniform, but she thought it was a pilot who she was dating, and is like, nope, that's just a Master Guide Pathfinder. So I recommend to check them out for some humor that's very specific to
I bet you
Adventism.
there's a lot of Pathfinders out there that's been mistaken for military personnel.
Right. And the other thing that I thought was cool is that they've actually had Doug Batchelor and Pastor Myers on there answering questions about, why are bad things happening, and just a lot of the, I think, basic questions that we all, not all necessarily struggle with, but question sometime. And they have a good mix, I think, of humor and some, I think, funny topics that we can all relate to, not just as Adventists, but as Christians. And, you know, who do you want to sit next to it with at lunch? Abraham or David. So definitely you want to go check them out to get some humor, get some laughs, and of course, bring some smiles to your face despite the circumstances we all may be experiencing. So we'll put their show or their page in our show notes, but you just have to search them under SDA memes. They're pretty easy to find.
Definitely need some of that light and love.
Yes, sir. Whew, what a week, man.
Light and love. Which that's a whole nother thing too, but we'll talk about that later.
We got to talk about another episode, man. So we got to wrap it up. Definitely don't forget to go check us out on the podcast. I know new episodes are dropping today, so you definitely want to check that out. Go listen on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts are heard and listened to. You want to check us out.
Your favorite podcast station. Like, subscribe. Don't forget to share, and don't forget to join in the conversation. Keep the conversation going. We'd like to hear from y'all throughout the week. So maybe we'll talk about some of the stuff y'all want us to talk about.
Exactly. So go check us out on Instagram and Facebook, and to get in contact with us. And also we'll be updating our music playlist this week. There's definitely a lot of new music. There's Anthony Brown's got a new album. Jamie Grace has a new album. What? There's a new single from Ty Tribute. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of new music out, and so we definitely want to bring attention to that. And so we'll be updating our new music playlist just for you, our listeners, and let us know what should be added, of course. So on that note, what we got to say?
We got to say thanks for coming out. God bless you. Good night. No,
that's not. We don't do that.
So
don't fear the bad news.
Keep your heart and mind focused, and always trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord till I die.
And on that note, we are two Christian brothers. I'm Chuck.
I'm Zig.
And we out. Peace.